Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content, and if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my updated 2021 list of the top 10 greatest budget knives in my opinion. Now, these are not knives that came out necessarily in 2021. In fact, I think pretty much all of them came out in 2020 or much further back, right? I'm gonna try and be as clear as possible with this. A lot of this stuff has been on this list. I update this list every few months. A lot of this stuff has seen the list over and over and over again. Partially because I'm picky, and also because I can't handle every last little thing that comes out. I'm really hoping that 2021 knocks a bunch of these off the list. I think budget knives are arguably some of the most important knives in the knife community in general because they allow people to get their hands on really, really good stuff for not a whole lot of money. How am I defining budget knife? If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you already know. If you're new, it's anything under $75. Some people say it's under $100. Some people say it's under $50. Some people say it's under $20. On this channel, it's under $75. That's just how I do it. Some people don't like these screen recorded episodes. That's perfectly fine. If you don't want to watch the screen recorded episode, every single one of these knives has an individual and physical review. That means me handling the knife and talking about it on the channel. So you can simply type in the name of the knife and Metal Complex and it should pull up my review of this knife. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. And every single one of these knives, by the way, will be listed right down in the description so that you can check them out for yourself. These are in no particular order except for the last one, which is my absolute favorite budget knife of all time. So let's go ahead and start off here. With the first one on the list. This is the CIVI Odium. This is a small knife. This is a ferrum forged design that's made by CIVI. D2 steel and not really fully contoured G10, just heavily chamfered. This is a great small EDC option. Not every knife on this list is going to be small. Not every knife on this list is going to be big. But if you like smaller knives and you don't want to break the bank, this guy comes in around 50 bucks and is absolutely incredible. If you are limited legally for blade length, or you just prefer a smaller knife, the build quality on this thing is insane. If I'm not mistaken, they run on bearings. This is a flipper knife. It's also got that nice large slot there that makes it easy to open. Ergonomics are incredible. In a lot of ways, this is kind of like a mini Spyderco Shaman, but instead of a thumb hole, you get a thumb slot. I'd honestly this is one of those knives that I'd like to see a larger version of. I know people are like, we already have a larger version. It's called the CIVI this or the We that or what. No, I mean literally exactly this knife. Exactly. Not a single thing changed except for the length. That would be great. But I'm perfectly happy with the small version. This is insanely recommendable. I believe it came out in 2020. If you've never experienced this, never heard of it, you're looking for something in this price range, you like smaller knives, definitely the CIVI Odium. Moving on here, yeah, of course. Truthfully, it's hard. I mean, like, the Ontario Rat 1 and 2, I'm putting them both on the list. The one pictured here is the Rat 2, which is the smaller guy. These knives were hailed as kings of the budget world a long time ago. I can't sit here and tell you guys that they're not still one of the very best budget knives to, experience. And here recently, I named this as the very best knife to start. Like if you're venturing into the knife world for the first time, right? You've been carrying some junker thing from the gas station or from the Home Depot checkout counter, right? And you want to get your first real good knife. I still think it's the Ontario Rat, specifically the Ontario Rat 2, which is the smaller guy. You've got a combination of phosphor bronze and nylon on the inside of the pivot, which is fine. You've got nylon scales that are plenty good. Your choice between AUS 8 and D2, I would go with D2. But you can save a ton of money. I mean, not a ton, but you can really go budget route with the AUS 8. I think the AUS 8 versions come in at like $32, and then the D2 versions start at like $37 and go up to like $40. There's a bunch of different versions of this. All of them are well under 75 bucks, though. Most hover around the $38 mark. Yeah, this is a great knife. I still have mine. In fact, here's my Rat 1 and 2 are right here. Both of them are sitting right beside me. I use them as size comparison knives, and I still beat on my Rat 1 all the time. These are excellent knives. They easily make the top 10 list despite being the oldest knives that are included on this list. Moving on here, a newer one, the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo. Holy cow. If you want, like, arguably the best presentation in a knife for the least amount of money, oh my gosh, excuse me, I'm still a little bit under the weather. These are insane. Now, a lot of these budget knives, I mean, if you're not familiar with the budget knife world, most of this stuff is not going to be US made. Most of it is going to be foreign made. That's just something you're going to have to deal with in this territory. There is at least one knife on this list that is made in the USA, but most of this stuff, especially under the $50 mark, yeah, it's just not going to be made in the US. So for those of you who really care about that stuff, I get it. You're probably going to have to spend more money. The Artisan Cutlery is foreign made, the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo, but oh my goodness. Talk about a knife that can confuse people into thinking it costs way more than it actually does. This thing is a laser beam behind the edge. It's one of the only, Artisan Cutlery and CGRB is, to my knowledge, the only company that's actually using a powder steel in the budget territory. They use the AR RPM 9, which is starting to be referred to as just RPM 9. On a lot of the less expensive Artisans and the more expensive CGRBs, which they're the same company. CGRB is generally the less expensive part of the company, and Artisan's generally the more expensive part. But Artisan made this knife, which is a budget knife. There's two versions of it. There's the ones that come in micarta for a little bit more money, and these G10 variants for $45. It's about, I think it's about a full size knife. I want to say it's between 7 3/4 inches and 8 inches overall, with a nice clip point blade, nice shadow box liners that sort of protrude around the scale, and they're polished. Really pops on the different colors of scales that you can get. There's a few different colors. G10 scales are beautiful. Fit and finish all the way around is fantastic. They run on bearings, excellent flipping action. Just wonderful for $45. Powder steel is essentially, the RPM 9 steel is essentially the equivalent to a powder formed 9CR 18MOV, which is plenty fine for the budget territory. In fact, a lot of people consider that one of the best steels for the budget territory, so the powder formed version of it's going to be even better. Yeah, highly recommendable. You can check out my review of this one as well. Moving on here, yeah, I think this is the only, if I'm not mistaken, the only US-made budget knife on the list. A lot of people are going to question whether or not this is truly a budget knife. On Blade HQ, these things go for $72.99, so just barely making the criteria for this list. I don't think many people are going to argue that this is a good knife, by the way. And if you want to step it up further, you can pay a little bit over $100 and get a 20 CV version of this knife. Kershaw Bareknuckle is still probably one of the greatest, aside from being a good budget knife by my own standard. It's still considered one of the best. I mean, if anybody's top 50 list, I mean, a lot of people's top 20 lists, they're probably going to include the Bareknuckle as one of the greatest EDC folding knives of all time. Been around for a while. It's a manual flipper, which is excellent because a lot of times in this territory, Kershaw loves to feed us assisted knives. We don't need assisted. I mean, truthfully, if assisted knives went away forever, me personally, I just wouldn't care. We don't need assisted knives anymore. When the D10's tuned properly, right? If I want a knife that does that, I'll buy an automatic, right? But some people want the spring filling and they can't legally carry or own an auto in their state. So I don't know, maybe I get it. I like this one because it's not automatic. It fires just as hard, just as fast as, or it's not assisted. It fires just as hard, just as fast as an assisted knife because it's got a properly tuned detent. Overall profile is great. Materials are great. It's using, if I'm not mistaken, 14C28N, which is a plenty good steel for the price range. Yeah, there's very, very little to complain about when it comes to the Kershaw Bareknuckle. If you want to save some money, and the U.S. thing is important to you, which it is to me, honestly. I mean, I have knives in the budget territory that are foreign made, but, you know, if you really want to pick up a nice, inexpensive knife that is made in the United States, if you live here and home country manufacturing is important to you, yeah, the Kershaw Bareknuckle is still absolutely top tier in my opinion. Check it out. Moving on here, yeah, the CGRB feldspar, one of the least expensive knives on the list. This includes both the small and large version. Personally, I like the large version better. It fits my hands a little bit better. Small version, I want to say, is like, what is it, 7 inches, 6.75 inches, maybe smaller than that. Large version is about 8 inches, about the same size as a Benchmade Reptilian. Thumb stud opener, excellent blade profile, contour G10 scales, countersunk steel liners. You get a nice pivot collar on there, which will contrast well with whatever color that you pick up. These are D2 steel running on bearings. Yeah. If you like bearings and you like the idea of a thumb stud opener, because believe me, we've got plenty of flippers, right? Yeah, these are great. These are liner locks, as is the case with most of the knives on this list. The Bareknuckle, by the way, is it's technically a subframe lock. These are liner locks. I've got one of these in my own personal collection, and it is wonderful. I gushed about it when I did the review, and I would still say the same. Minimal hardware, just an absolutely excellent knife. I think one of the only issues with it, as is the case with a lot of knives on this list, and any list, truthfully, was the pocket clip. It wasn't great. It was a, C+ pocket clip, but it's it's okay. It'll do the job, right? This is an absolutely excellent knife all the way around, and coming in at, gosh, what is this? $35, something around there. Oh my gosh, excellent knife for 35 bucks-ish. Moving on here, yeah, I think this is actually the least expensive budget knife on the list. This thing is stupid good. There's almost this knife is virtually flawless, unless you just freaking hate, Wharncliffe blades. I found that this blade shape is actually really beneficial for general EDC. At 30 bucks, this is almost a throwaway knife. Not that it's likely to break, but it's running on a combination of phosphor bronze and nylon. For whatever reason, this thing is just insanely smooth. Micarta scales and D2 steel. There is a Knives Plus exclusive that is in S35VN for, what is it, 60? Even the S35VN version is budget. A lot of people are going to say that this is the greatest budget knife of all time. And honestly, that's not a bad choice. Thumb stud opener, just big enough to get a full grip on, about, I think, 7.5 inches overall. Amazing pocket clip. One of my only gripes with this knife is that it uses T6 hardware, which is the case with almost everything on this list. And there's a lot of screws, but whatever. Fit and finish is okay. Mine's got kind of a wonky grind, but whatever. I mean, at 30 bucks, like, whatever. It's been great. Anybody who picks this knife up, in fact, I mean, you can throw a stone in any direction on the knife part of the internet and find something positive about the QSP Penguin. Did I say that? This is the QSP Penguin. Extremely recommendable knife. Moving on here, of course, a knife that completes everybody's top 10 budget knife list right now, and has for a long time. And that is, of course, the CIVI Elementum. Arguably one of the most popular budget knives of all time. And I mean, yeah, for good reason. This thing is straightforward. I've always said this. I mean, and it's not like this is some sort of amazing, observation. Simpler aesthetics generally draw a wider audience. So when you get that simple aesthetic, right, and it's executed well, ergonomically, and in terms of like the blade profile, then yeah, it's generally kind of a home run, or a grand slam in this case. The Savivi Elementum has many forms. The standard form in G10 and D2, which is the standard form of all budget knives right now. Excuse me. It's just excellent. Not a fully flat ground blade, but quite thin. Nice flat at the top, does get very thin behind the edge. This is a flipper, low profile flipper tab running on bearings. Little sort of not super aggressive peel ply texture G10. You've got minor shadow boxing on the scales. You've got, as far as I remember, T8 screws on the handle on each side. I mean, there's really not much to complain about here. In fact, I think one of the only complaints I had was, again, the bill on the pocket clip, which is always, that's just like a consistent nitpick from me. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to, here's the thing. I think some people struggle with lists and things. They don't want to include things just because they're popular. Well, if it's good, I'm going to put it on the list. The CIVI Elementum is very popular. It's obvious. I mean, I think people knew it was going to make the list before they watched the video, but is that going to stop me from putting it on? No, it really is great. Absolutely. It's extremely recommendable. If you've never experienced this knife, I highly recommend you check it out. Moving on here, yeah, of course. The CIVI Praxis is one of the greatest budget knives to ever exist. And this is one of those knives that I want 2021 to knock a lot of these knives off the list. Believe me, I do. I haven't handled everything, but I've handled a lot of the good stuff. I really want 2021 to bring some incredible budget designs and knock a lot of these off the list. One of the knives that I don't expect to be knocked off the list is the CIVI Praxis. This thing is stupid good. It's essentially a full-size Spyderco Shaman without the opening hole, but a flipper tab instead, and a liner lock. The lines are incredibly similar, except that the blade stock thickness is much... It's nowhere near as thick as the Shaman, and the final cutting edge is very thin. You want a full-size knife that has a performance blade, and you like the profile. I mean, this is so good. So good. It's just insane. These come in at about $40, 40 to $45. 9CR 18 MOV steel, which is just fine for the price range. Yeah, I think these came out in 2018 and are still mega heavy hitters now in 2021. Moving on here, still the CGRB Rhea. This one is the micarta variant, the AR RPM 9 steel, which is great. It's still in budget territory. I want to say this guy's maybe $55. This is a smaller guy, more of an office carry, however you're going to define that. Again, CGRB doing an excellent, CGRB / Artisan Cutlery doing an excellent job with these shadow box polished liners that stick out just a little bit around the outside of the scales. The combination of contoured scales on this guy, and honestly, I think the best looking versions of these are the micarta ones. I think you can still be under $75 with this knife if you go micarta and you get that titanium pocket clip, that modular titanium pocket clip off of their website. The one that I handled was, the one that I bought for myself was a G10 variant, which is just fine, much less expensive. But you get powder steel, the AR RPM 9 powder steel, contoured micarta, shadow box polished liners, excellent blade profile, fully flat ground, thumb stud opener. Doesn't look like you have very good access to the liner lock, but believe it or not, you do. Super minimal hardware. There's one screw on each side for the frame and then the pivot. And that's it. And guess what? They're both T8. Stupid good. This is one of those knives where I think my only complaint was, and it wasn't even a complaint, it was like, it's small and some people don't like small knives. If you're okay with small knives, I think this is something that everybody should own. Absolutely. And if you don't want the micarta or you don't care about the powder steel, the G10 version comes in 12C27N, the Sandvik stuff, which is great. And you can get whatever color G10 you want. The one that I have is the jade or the translucent stuff. And the standard steel pocket clip is really, really good. Really good. This is excellent. Virtually a flawless knife, unless you just don't like small knives. I think, we're moving on here. The very last knife on the list, and this is still what I consider to be the greatest budget knife that has ever existed. Now, there's a lot of debate on what the very best budget knife ever is, right? So this is just my opinion. You're probably gonna see it. I don't know if there's anybody else saying like definitively, on YouTube that this is the best, but this is just my favorite. This is the Savivi Oris. Funny enough, it comes in the FRN. But I like this guy because of the profile, because of the shape of the handle. The shape of the handle is very similar to the Benchmade Griptilian, but the size of it is in between the small and large size. I can get a full four-finger purchase on this guy because of the forward choil. It's got a beautiful clip point blade. It's got nice access to that finger slot, so you can do the reverse flick, you can do the flick, you can pinch open it, whatever. You can flip it because it's got a flipper tab. It's got that, like I said, the forward choil. It's super thin behind the edge, super thin. Lightweight because of the FRN, but it is still backed up by a steel liner that's been milled out. So it takes away from generally, that cheap feeling that you get with FRN. I've got it right here in front of me. It's lightweight, but it doesn't feel cheap lightweight. It doesn't feel like the substantially more expensive Benchmade bug out. I hate how that feels. That's because they hollowed out the FRN, and it's got a teeny tiny little cartridge liner in it. So you're feeling every last bit of that hollowness every time you flip it. With this guy, it's got nice texturing on the FRN. It's got a nice full faux bolster look. Beautiful pocket clip, virtually flawless. It's also got T8 hardware. 2 screws on each side, which is where I kind of draw the line for, that's where I want it. 2 screws or less for the frame and then the pivot assembly. This is basically perfect, and it's big enough to be a capable knife, but it's small enough to where it's not going to weigh you down, right? The blade length is, hang on, let me measure it real quick because I always forget. Blade length on this guy is just a little bit over 3 inches. In fact, it is about 3 1/4. Now, it would have been truly excellent if they had managed to make this a, 2.9-inch blade, make it legal for a lot more people. But still, if you can, legally carry this size of knife in your area, which I think the majority of people watching this won't be restricted. There's still going to be people restricted, but for me, I think that this is it's so excellent. Blade steel, 9CR, 18 MOV. Price on these guys, I think they come in between 40 and 45 bucks. There's a wide variety of different colors. I think the only thing that could have made this better was if it was G10, and that's just because I like the feel of G10 over FRN. But because of the way they did this, again, with the liners underneath, it doesn't feel cheap. It feels solid. It feels capable. And boy, is it capable. God, that tip and the belly of the blade is so performance-oriented. It's just crazy. This is an excellent knife. This is, in my opinion, the most highly recommendable budget EDC folding knife. Still, I would love to see something knock it off the list in 2021, but that's going to be no small feat. It's going to take something truly special to knock this out of the #1 spot. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it. Like I said, every single one of these knives should be available right now, so I will link them down below. Depends on when you're watching the video, of course. But all of these will be listed down below. And like I said, if you want to hear, my in-depth thoughts about any model, you can simply type in the name of the knife and metal complex, or metal complex, the name of the knife. It should pull up my video. You can also check through my playlist. A lot of these are on my cheap knives. In fact, all of them should be on my cheap knives I like playlist, so that might be easier to find it. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.